Hey guys, Q&A Tuesday. Just a quick reminder from the last episode in regards to where to send your question, and that is romansharf at luxurybazaar.com. Getting very hard to keep up with the comments, so it's just an easier way for me to manage the questions coming in. Let's jump right into our first question from Damien Alts via email. Keep up the great work. Truly enjoying your vids. Thank you. I have a question. What do you think of the new Lange Odysseus? Some mixed opinions out there, especially about the bracelet. I happen to love the bracelet as it gives the watch that tool look. Also, you have the integrated look with the option to easily swap to a leather or rubber. How do you think it will hold up against the big boys, PPVC and AP? Personally, I think it's a far better value for the money with the extra date complications. Many thanks always from DK. So now I know your name, DK. I've answered your questions before, but under the alias of DK, which you are on YouTube. Now I actually know your name, Damien. So, personal opinion on the new Lange, and I talked about it in one of the episodes, and my only concern is that I feel that the watch doesn't match the bracelet. I don't like the bracelet. I don't like the bracelet because I don't feel that it is a match. Now, my opinion could be skewed due to the fact that I'm not used to seeing a stainless steel Lange on a stainless steel bracelet. That when I think Lange and I think strap, right? Best case scenarios, I think gold bracelets, which were actually discontinued quite a while ago, right? The ones that are on gold bracelets are pretty scarce. They didn't make very many of them. They made some perpetuals, I remember, on the bracelet. I remember having a few of those. I remember having a Lange one with an MOP dial in platinum on the bracelet, which was a pretty limited edition watch. But I felt like if they were going to make a stainless steel watch on a bracelet, which is technically their answer to your Royal Oak Chronos, to your plain Royal Oaks, to your Nautiluses and things of that nature, why not go with the same bracelet you've always done, right? In the likes of what you guys put on your gold watches in the past. In the very least, that would have resonated with Lange followers as, oh, that's a Lange bracelet. But then if I think about this watch on that bracelet, I don't know if that's going to be a good look as well. I felt like they could have put a little more effort into the bracelet to make it a bit more unique outside of other brands. There are brands downstairs that have some of the cheaper stuff, so like Maurice Lacroix and Oris and things of that nature that have bracelets that are pretty much identical to that. And that's what kind of threw me off. Now, throwing that watch on a rubber strap or a leather strap, yes, that's going to change the whole look. So again, I don't know if it's the fact that I'm not used to seeing that bracelet on a Lange watch or often seeing a Lange on a bracelet that's throwing me off, but for the most part, I absolutely love the watch. I think they're second to none when it comes to quality of the watchmaking that they produce, but I'm not too crazy, and that's just the honest truth. How will it hold up against PPVC and AP? I mean, look, I hate to tell you that, they're in a league of their own and they're not trying to compete. Everybody's trying to compete in this market regardless of what brand you are. But at the end of the day, Lange sort of has their own following. I've always felt that my Lange customer has always stayed a Lange customer, and they would not sway too far out. I've never seen Lange customers jump over to AP sports models. And I think it's going to stay that way. And I think it's another reason why a lot of Lange guys weren't too crazy about the Lange, because what is this? Is this us trying to compete with the Nautiluses or the Royal Oaks? Stick to making dressy watches, right? But I think it was a necessary move on Lange's part to enter that sports watch market, that stainless steel market, simply because of market conditions. And I think it was also their way to maybe attract a younger buyer, and by younger I don't mean age, but somebody who's recently got into the watch game that has money to spend and he wants those toys, and they're usually reaching for Richard Milles or the Royal Oaks or the Nautiluses, right? The stuff that's super popular. I think it was also their way to attract a new blood. And how are they going to hold up against Patek, VC, and AP? It's a bit early to tell. I do know they're not easy to find, but again, Lange doesn't make many watches to begin with. So I think in the long run they'll do well, right? It doesn't really look like a sports watch because it still has the look of a typical Lange, right? I think it's going to be a watch that's going to compare well versus, and I hate to call them big boys because Lange, to me, in my eyes, is just a bigger boy as an AP, Patek, and Vacheron, as you mentioned, right? So I think they'll hold up well. I think this is just an opening to, a new line of business for Lange of stainless steel sports watches, and I'm sure we're going to see some more innovation in that respect. Hopefully they'll tweak that bracelet design a little bit because, again, I'm not too crazy about it. DK, hope that answers your question. Here's a really good one from a gentleman whose question I answered fairly recently, Oliver Douglas. Roman, thank you for answering my previous question. You're welcome. I wanted to know what the setup is with filling orders for people and other people filling orders for you, specifically when something goes wrong. Is it relationship dependent, value dependent? Are there any unwritten rules within the watch industry? I know you have sourced watches for people in the past and possibly still do, and I'm sure some people buy from you for their own customers, whether you know it or not. For example, if you sold a Rolex Submariner to some other dealer in Texas and you sold it to a customer, what happens if that customer wanted to return it because he didn't like it? Is the watch sent back to him and then back to you, creating 2 refunds, or is the dealer in Texas stuck with it? I also wanted to know what happens if the customer had broken the watch and they tried returning it in the above situation. What happens when you start doing higher-end tourbillon watches? Are refunds and returns through dealer transactions accepted, or does this change when more money is involved? Sorry for the long, winding questions. Keep up the good work. Oliver, I like all these questions. So yeah, it may be a little bit long, but this brings up a lot of good points. Some of them I have discussed in the past, and the very first thing I guys told you about is we're in the funny business. Our business is mostly based on handshakes and your reputation, right? So it is very much relationship dependent, right? But it's not definitely value dependent. But there are nuances regardless of value on both cases. You said, I know you have sourced watches for people in the past, and I'm sure some people buy from you for their own customers, whether you know it or not. I do know it. 80% of our business is actually wholesale, which is B2B, dealer to dealer, not necessarily in bulk. Sometimes 1 watch at a time, sometimes 10 watches at a time, but we do sell a lot of other dealers, and we do a lot of what's called drop shipping. So somebody will call us and they have an order that they need to fill, and hey, do you have this watch? Yes, I do. Can you drop ship it to my customer? Here's a label. Yes. And this is where it's up to me to ensure that the watch is on the up and up, that if the watch is as described, let's say if it's a pre-owned watch, if it's a brand new, we make sure it's truly brand new with box papers and everything else, because now I'm the face of the dealer that I'm doing business with. And the last thing I want to do is spoil that relationship on my reputation, as I mentioned earlier, by shipping somebody who bought a brand new watch from another dealer something used or scratched or beat up or not working, right? So yes, we do that all the time, and there are cases where somebody does it for us as well. I've told you before, not everything on our website I have in stock, so some of these orders will get drop shipped, again, from few key dependent dealers and distributors that I have relationships with, those that I would trust to be the face of my company and drop ship a watch directly to a client. And there's not that many that I do that with, right? These are people that I've done business with in years. Oftentimes I'll pay them more money than another distributor just because I have a relationship with them and because they're more dependent and reliable. So Submariner, sold to a dealer in Texas. You sold to a customer. What happens if that customer wants to return the watch because you didn't like it? Is the watch sent back to you and then back to the dealer, creating 2 refunds? Well, it depends, right? If it's a dealer I'm regularly doing business with, a guy that I've known for years and we have a relationship, and he reaches out to me and he wants to buy a particular watch and he says, hey, Roman, do you have this in stock? I said, yeah. I got a client looking for one. I'm going to send it out to him. Let me know, make sure everything is okay, and then pay you. No problem. Goes without saying, I know that watch can be returned. And guys I have relationship with, they won't often pay me until the customer pays them, right? If it's a dealer I don't know and he calls me sourcing for a particular watch, I sell it to him B2B. I don't care what he does with the watch afterwards. I have no idea if he's keeping it for stock, if he's selling it off to a client. It's done. Unless that dealer, even though somebody I may not have done business in the past but knows of us and calls us and orders a particular watch, tells me, hey, listen, I have a client that wants this watch. I have a return policy, or I want to show this to a client. If it's a person I trust or somebody vouches for him, I'll send him that watch on memo. They'll show it to a client. Once they tell me it's sold, it's sold. If not, they ship it back. Even if it's somebody that I don't know, I'll give it to them on cash memo, right? Which means pay me for the watch. Here's the watch. Do what you want with it. You got a couple of days to work with it. And then if it doesn't work out, send it back in its original condition. No questions asked. I'll refund you the money. But for the most part, 99 out of 100 times, even if I don't know the dealer, there's going to be 5 other dealers that I can speak with about him that will vouch for him and say, hey, this guy's good, send him the watch, no worries, right? Regardless of how expensive the watch is, right? Now, if this is a case where somebody calls me and says, I need this particular watch, and I don't have this watch in stock, and I have to go out there and buy it, then there's no return policy. If I'm going out there and sourcing a watch for you, you better be sure that your customer A is going to take it, B, that if you need to return it, you're not returning it to me, because this was not a watch that I was looking to have in my regular stock. It's something I'm specifically ordering for you to do whatever you wish, and in this case, give it to your client. Then by all means, there is no return policy back to me. If your customer is not happy for whatever reason, and if there's no fault on my end, meaning I didn't sell you a broken watch or something is wrong with the watch, then you're stuck with the watch as a dealer. And that's the risk that you have to take on if you want to play in this game, right? If you want to sell $100,000 watches, be prepared to stock a $100,000 watch in case something goes wrong. If your customer changes their mind or gets hit by a bus the next day, that's your issue. That's the breaks of our business. And the last one that you talked about, I also know what happens if a customer had broken the watch and they tried returning it in the above situation. What happens when you start doing high-end tourbillon watches? Are refunds and returns through dealer transactions accepted, or does this change when more and more money is involved? It doesn't change. I don't care if it's a Submariner or a tourbillon. If I send somebody a brand new watch, if I send somebody a working watch, and then a week later, a dealer calls me up, it's like, hey, customer just returned this watch, and he sends it back to me, and I see that the watch is obviously broken, been tampered with, been worn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to accept that return either. I'm going to tell my dealer to deal with your client. Your client returned a broken watch, right? And again, it's a relationship thing, right? So if very first thing we try to do is we try to amend the situation. In the case where a customer says, hey, something went wrong, a watch is broken, something isn't working, the very first thing to do with my clients is I'm not the guy to throw the blame. Oh, you broke the watch, it's your problem. No. I've had this happen to me numerous times. And what a lot of dealers end up doing is killing a relationship with a potential long-term customer by throwing in his face that you broke the watch. The first thing I say to a client, hey, let me see the watch, let me see what's up. Oftentimes clients get a watch that overwinded. Right? Oftentimes, some watches you can't change the date unless the hour hand is between 3 and 9. Right? A lot of you guys know that. Some customers overdo it with the perpetual calendar, where they go forward and you can't go backwards. Now you have to open up the watch and do it. So rather than me telling a customer, "Hey, this is your fault, your problem, you deal with it," no, send me back the watch. Let me see what I can do. If it's an easy, quick fix, I fix it, I send it back to him. Now, if I send a customer a watch and he blatantly wears it for a week and then sends it back to me scratched up and beat up just because he wanted to flex somewhere at a party, then I'm obviously going to have an issue with that, right? Especially a new customer. But when there's a dealer in between, it doesn't change. If a dealer that I've done business with for a long time calls me up, it's like, yo, this watch was sent out to this guy, it's not working. Anything can happen. When the watch leaves this office and it goes to get shipped somewhere, anything can happen in transit. Anything can happen upon the client receiving the watch. All of a sudden, a seemingly working watch that went through Create here ends up a few days later on the customer's wrist and ends up not working. It has happened in the past before. So what do? I work with the dealer because I have a relationship with that dealer. And I say, hey, what is this client looking to do? He's like, oh, he just wants the watch to work, right? No problem. If it's a brand spanking new watch, I can go back to the distributor, have it replaced. If it's just a minor issue where sometimes customer doesn't know how to set a particular watch, where they say that it's not working, but yet it is working. It just needed to be set properly, wound properly, et cetera, boom, the customer's happy, my dealer's happy. But if it's a malicious thing, if I send a dealer a brand spanking new watch and a week later he calls me up and says, hey, this dude just returned the watch to me, it's got this, it's got that, I'm gonna say, I'm sorry, that's your problem. I sold you a brand spanking new watch. And if this watch is going to come back to me and I'll have to sell it as used and it's going to lose value based on that, I'm not going to take it back. And again, that would be the breaks of being in our business. That's the risk that I take on a daily basis, and I see no reason why other dealers that want to flip watches shouldn't take on the same risk. Hope that shines a little bit of light into that issue, Oliver. It is a fairly sensitive issue, but as I said in the beginning, it's all relationship dependent, as you said. You know, there are no written rules. It's just a question of relationship and reputation. Here's a good one from Gus Ganther. Ron, I wanted to thank you for the education. I've been a long-time follower. I'm back and watched all the Q&As and all the what's on my desk and learned a ton. And I've become a better and more educated watch collector buyer for it, so thank you. Thank you very much for that. Here's my question. If you could, what would you change in the watch industry? What would you change at the manufacturer level, the AD level, and the gray market level? Thanks for the honest content. Don't ever change. Well, I did touch upon these subjects. You're not the first one to ask me about changes. So I'm not going to get into the details on every level. I will give you one specific big change that I would love to see. And that is for the companies themselves, the manufacturers themselves, to take lead in influencing the buyer. And it sounds bad. Why would they start influencing the buyers? Well, because it's happening on a daily basis. Right now, your influencers online that have thousands or hundreds of thousands of millions of followers on Instagram and Facebook, along other social media platforms, they're the one influencing the buyer into buying watches. One of the reasons I got on YouTube to tell you guys how it is and to show you that, you know what, you don't always have to go for the hype. There's a lot more things in the industry that you can appreciate. I'm out here doing history of XYZ brand videos every so often because I want the consumer to be educated when it comes to what they're buying, the history behind the brands, the quality of watchmaking, the complication of watchmaking. Don't get me wrong, there's still a majority share of watch buyers out there that are super knowledgeable, that know what they're looking at, that will value a watch based on its complication, based on the history of the company, not look at things like resale value first and foremost, right? But right now we're looking at people that want resale value, that want their watch to go up in value, and they want it to be on every Instagram page out there, i.e. comes in Royal Oak, Richard Mille, Nautiluses, along with many other watches from other brands. But it's the hype stuff. It's the stuff that you see day in and day out on various social media platforms. What would be the change on a manufacturer's level, even though I said I wasn't going to get into those type of details? On a manufacturer's level, the change would be education. The manufacturers should spend a little bit more effort within their marketing budget or take extra money to be the influencer. Allow the manufacturer's Instagram page, allow the manufacturer's content, whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it's an Instagram page or Facebook, to be the first and foremost influencer of let's say a first-time buyer, right? Somebody that's new to the market, and I'm talking about the new blood, right? Because all new blood wants nowadays is the hot stuff. And Rolex is actually the one that does a great job at that. I think their marketing and advertising department is doing a tremendous job, and everybody should take sample of that. I think they're more or less the front runner of their advertising, their marketing. They're in charge of that. They don't need to reach out to these huge influencers on Instagram, such as Watch Anish. Great guy, great influencer. He's the one that technically revolutionized influencer marketing in the watch realm, right? But Rolex doesn't need to go out to him, but many other brands have, right? In order to bump up that influence. Well, rather than reaching out to influencers, be your own influencer. Educate your consumer, okay? Influence your consumer into buying your watches for reasons X, Y, Z. If it means getting an executive in front of a camera just like me to speak about a particular watch, to get a show going, let's have a look. Let's go to YouTube real quick. Let's look at, I don't know, Breitling. That's the first thing that came to mind, so I clicked on Breitling. So Breitling has about 38,000 followers, and they're putting out all these quality top content videos out there, right? Some interviews. They're obviously a lot of the stuff is obviously related to flying and things of that nature. But I'm looking at their videos, and I see videos that don't even break 1,000 views, which means they're not doing a good job in regards to reviewing their own product, and it's a shame. This is where you should be investing money into. This is where you should be focusing your effort on, because this is the kind of stuff that would influence your buyer, right? Influence is not all they're cracked out to be. Trust me, we've gone the influencer route a couple of times, and we tried influencer marketing, which is like a new thing within marketing right now. And most of these accounts don't give you the desired results unless you do it yourself. And this is why I got on YouTube to talk to you guys about watches. Unless you do it yourself, you really can't depend on others to do it. And that would be the one major thing I would change on the manufacturer's level when it comes to watch industry. You must educate your consumer to a point where it almost feels stupid to buy elsewhere other than you, sometimes even regardless of price. And I've used that throughout the years. I've always educated my customer first and foremost. So have my sales team, rather than just going for the kill and going for the sale, and that keeps our clients coming back. I can very much say the same thing about the AD level. ADs are dying out, and not partially because retail is dying out, but partially because it's the manufacturers that are killing them off slowly but surely. The guys that carry their weight for many, many years, unfortunately with the introduction of the internet, brick and mortar stores are a dying breed, and so are ADs. Companies are going into picking their winners, cutting down their production, and rather than spreading the good stuff among the ADs, they're coming out with these boutique editions. A lot of them have e-commerce website which you can buy on directly. They can customize your watches. They make watches that you can only buy directly from the companies. So they're basically f***ing the ADs. And a lot of ADs are not very, very happy because they're stuck between two fires. And one is the manufacturers themselves, and two is guys like us that are sort of killing them from both ends. If somebody offered me a dealership across brands to open up a store today, I would say that would be suicidal. I would never do it. The only thing I can tell you that the ADs can fix for themselves at this point is get more of what I talked about on the manufacturer's level, advertise themselves where they market themselves greatly, hold events, invite people over. It's still a very live business. People like to touch and feel stuff, so do a lot of that stuff. It used to be that a lot of ADs used to hold a lot of fancy events at their stores. Companies used to come out to those events and display new pieces and things of that nature. That kind of died down as well. I used to get invited to those things. I don't remember the last time I've been to, a trunk show at an AD. There's sort of also dying out. I think you need to go back to those. Those work. They work well. People like to touch and feel. People like the personal attention. And as far as the gray market level is concerned, well, a lot of these guys jump in just to make a quick dollar B2B, right? A lot of these guys jump in and have no idea what they're talking about with no basis, and yet they're out there selling watches to consumers and telling them lies. Oh, this watch is going to hold its value. Watches are a great investment. It's those type of guys that I want to see weeded out. And we're going to see that. Coronavirus is obviously going to take effect across all market, including luxury goods, and some of these flyby operations are going to disappear, much like they did in 2008 post the crisis. But if you're going to be somebody that's going to get into the watch business, specifically in the gray market, at least educate yourself, right? Educate yourself well enough to where you can hold a conversation with clients, to where you can understand the difference between movement, complication, market value, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And don't overpromise people things. And again, if you noticed, everything here is along lines of marketing and education. And as a new gray market dealer, if you're in this game to make a quick buck, make sure you have enough of a backup plan to do so, because otherwise you either end up screwing the end consumer when you get a few returns, all of a sudden you run out of money and you don't know how to pay for stuff and you start scrambling, or you end up telling a lot of lies. Educate yourself before jumping into this business, right? And at the same token, I walk around the show and I see a lot of young kids that probably have entered the business in the last 5-6 years, and they think they're hot shit because they made a lot of money fast in a good market, right? Market slows down, all of a sudden they're stuck with pieces, they don't know what to do, they run out of money, and they start to go bad. By bad, I mean not paying bills and doing stupid stuff in order to recuperate some of the money they may have in there, or to repay some of the loans they may have taken in order to stock up on some of the hot pieces that they have out there. So I can talk about the gray market issues for quite a while, but I just wanted to give you a few ideas. But mainly it's based on, again, educating your consumer, being your own influencer, not letting others do it for you, and just being honorable and knowledgeable. Because knowledge is the one thing that will ultimately make the sale for you, not a pushy salesperson or a pushy sales technique. Hope that sort of shines a little bit of light into that question. Take a quick question from KK. Roman, I look forward to seeing more content. Thank you. I was hoping you could discuss the Rolex Yacht Master 216622 and explain why the stainless steel sports Craze does this particular watch go unnoticed, even though I feel it's a very attractive timepiece. All the best. It's a very simple answer. You are a minority when it comes to thinking that this watch is an attractive watch. Majority of people that like Rolex, they don't like the older Rolex Yacht Master. The Rolex Yacht Master 2, they rebounded well. But unfortunately, this was never a popular model from the day that it came out. And usually when something is not popular, it doesn't all of a sudden become more popular. It just doesn't happen. The GMTs were popular going back 50 years, right? And yes, may not have been as big a craze in terms of money and shortages and things of that nature, but nevertheless, they were a pretty popular watch. But when the 16622 first came out, people didn't take well to it, and it sort of translated throughout times, which is why they revamped the line and created a Rolex Yacht Master 2. So if you're not popular to begin with, the odds of you becoming super popular at a later time are pretty slim to none, and that's the case with the original Yacht Master. Now, I want to make a comment before I get into the last question in regards to Michael Nutt's question in regards to a book called A Man and His Watch. I actually do have this book, but I felt like this book deserved perhaps a separate episode to discuss, because to give you my thoughts on a book that's loved by many watch enthusiasts in one quick answer, I felt like wouldn't be fair. But you did mention here, I know you also sent this to a bunch of other YouTubers like Bark and Jack, David Khalil, Just Bluefish, Just Horology, Paul Thorpe, myself, and the Timeless Watch channel. I would love to do some sort of a collab video with all these guys. That would be pretty kick-ass. But in either case, I will give you my opinion on this book, perhaps in a separate episode. Let me take one more question before I get out of here. This one comes from Kevin. Roman, I absolutely love the content you create. Love how you share your knowledge about the industry that usually appears to be quite secret, especially when it comes to prices. Thank you for that. I have two questions for you. First, I'd like to know your opinion about the Rolex Air King 116900 with the green print and yellow crown on the dial. Is this a good watch? Does it hold its value like most Rolex? Do you think that as a steel sports watch from Rolex, it's just a matter of time because it becomes as thought after as the big brothers? Well, yes and no. This particular Air King is not the most popular model, and it often traded at a discount. Due to the hype of all the other steel sports model that has happened in the last year and a half, that watch has gone up to trading close to retail or at retail, and I've seen some people even wanted to charge over retail for this particular watch, but it's still not a popular watch. Number one, it's the simplest Rolex you can buy. Number two, it's smaller in size, right? And bigger sells now. The trends have changed to bigger watches. If they discontinue this watch today, it probably would go up in value. It really depends on how long they're going to continue making this particular watch. And I don't see them discontinuing it anytime soon, simply because it's sort of that entry-level affordable watch. A lot of people like the green print and the yellow crown, and for the most part, people can afford this watch. It's readily available, unlike some of the other stainless steel pieces. But I don't think this is something that's going to shoot through the roof in value and become some sort of a future collectible unless they cut off production and don't make too many of them. But I think it's a little too late for that. They probably already made a ton of these guys. Second question is about watch trading. If, an example, I managed to negotiate 20% off at a Rolex AD, like for some less desirable pieces such as Cellini or two-tone Datejust, how do I sell for a profit to an end consumer? Do I play on the fact that that consumer might not know that it's actually possible to negotiate prices even at an AD? Thank you for your answers. I can't wait to see more of your work. Well, unless your consumer or your end customer lives in the woods somewhere and doesn't have access to the internet, you're going to have a hard time reselling that Cellini watch. Thanks to guys like us, everything is so transparent online nowadays that there's nobody out there that A, doesn't know that you can negotiate prices with AD, number one. And two, most people, the first thing they do, let's say if you try to sell something to your next door neighbor, for example, the first thing they're going to do is go online and quickly see around and about what these things are selling for. So if, let's say, you bought a two-tone Datejust and a Cellini at a 20% off discount together, which is very believable, and then ended up getting a Batman, you're going to try to offload the Cellini and the two-tone Datejust, odds are you're not going to make any money on it. A, you won't sell it for retail for sure, and you won't even sell it for 10 off, especially the Cellini, because again, people will go online, they'll see what these things are trading for, and they certainly most likely will know that they can go to their local AD and get that same discount on the less desirable pieces such as Cellinis and the two-tone Datejust. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as usual. Remember, email your questions to romansharf@luxurybazaar.com. Comment below, let me know what you thought about the video. Hit the like button, hit the share button, most important. This is what helps my channel grow. And last but not least, if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell notification, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday.